Hey Gemma, I noticed that my sword has been less effective the past few weeks. Can you have a look at it? Oh yeah, I decided counter slash was too strong, so I left it a little bit dull in the part that you hit with that attack. Wait, you did that on purpose? Yeah, I mean, it wasn't fair for the monsters. Well, could you just make it sharp again for me? Well, alright, but only halfway. Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, with patch 1.021 releasing in Monster Hunter Wilds, we got an amalgam of balance changes across the weapons, with every weapon type except for hammer getting some level of change, and 11 of them getting properly meaningful changes past just little bug fixes, but full-on proper increases in either damage output, quality of life, or a mixture of the two. With that said, today we're going to go through the patch notes for each weapon and compare footage taken before the patch with footage after the patch to give actual numbers that you can see for any of the numerical or statistical changes, and to show the timing differences for anything where animation speed was changed as well. For the sake of comparison, unless I am specifically testing an elemental scaling change, every clip will be with exactly 100 raw attack on the weapon with no attack from any other source, and also green sharpness. Starting at the top with Greatsword, the first change is that they made it easier to chain into tackles from combos such as strong wide slash into true charge slash, tackle into true charge slash, and side blow into strong charge slash. This has seemingly just increased the speed at which you can tackle out of the other attacks. Leaping wide slash now change faster into side blow, and you can see the difference between pre-patch and post-patch on screen here. And they have also slightly sped up the combo between strong wide slash into true charge slash, which is actually a really powerful change. Raw damage for charge slash has been increased by around 5%. Raw damage for strong charge slash has been increased by around 3%. Raw damage for true charge slash first hit is the same, but the second hit, which is the main one, the big damage, has been increased by around 3%. So it's not a massive buff, but it is still a buff to your strongest attack. Raw damage for strong wide slash has been increased by around 3%, and element scaling for strong charge slash, true charge slash, and strong wide slash have also been very minorly increased. Moving on to Longsword then, only one line in the patch notes for this weapon: reduced delay between input and action when chaining into EI Spirit Slash from Special Sheath, and additionally slightly extended the window for performing the EI Spirit Slash. To simplify this, they made the EI Spirit Slash animation start closer to when you actually press the button than it used to. This makes the timing more consistent, and they also extended the frames outwards that count for the counter effect, so EI Spirit Slash is just notably better now. It feels way easier to hit the timing and have it be successful, having messed with this literally hours before the patch and now directly after the patch as well. Next up we have Sword and Shield, one singular line of change, and it is counter slash raw damage increased, which is funny because one of the biggest nerfs they did for any weapon last patch was, well, reducing the damage of counter slash. So it seems they've just gone back on this, but only a little bit. Specifically, the damage compared to pre-patch is increased by exactly 10%. This is a nice bonus, but for reference, in Title Update 2's patch, the damage of counter slash was reduced by 20%. So this is essentially bringing us back to a midpoint between the two versions that we've had, a partial but not complete walk back on the previous nerf from Title Update 2. Next up we have Dual Blades, which has arguably the most substantial singular change, a full new focus strike animation that matches a hunter art from GU, as well as one of the attacks that you can use in Sunbreak as well, as that was inspired by the attack from GU, and the way that you use this attack now is after hitting the focus strike, you hit the follow-up inputs that you can see in the corner, and instead of doing the Beyblade attack, which, while fun, is usually not the strongest choice that you can make against a monster, and instead you now have this as a different focus strike finisher. You can still do the Beyblade if you want to, you just don't press the button, so it's not just like gone. This is just a different option that you can choose from. This hones in on one of the monster body parts, the part that you're aiming at, dealing very centralized damage, as well as making sure that you end the focus strike where you want to, instead of just being flung into the distance from the normal version. On the training dummy, both versions of the focus strike finisher do pretty much identical damage, which leads me to believe that the actual motion values behind them are very similar in a vacuum, but the important distinction that makes turning Tide Drill, the new attack, generally stronger, is the fact that it only attacks a specific body part that you can choose. These will generally be on body parts that you're attacking purposefully, which means that it's a body part that will be weak to your damage, and so you'll be doing more damage hitting that part with the attack than you would hitting anywhere else on the monster. The downside of the Beyblade is that you have to hit multiple hit zones. You don't have a choice, and most often not all of them will be weak to your damage type, so in most situations, turning Tide Drill is the technically correct choice.
The best kind of correct.
Not to mention that, again, it just lets you land in a much safer, more predictable position. That said, that's only one of multiple changes for dual blades, and the next, also quite impactful one, is adding an effect to Demon Boost mode. This is the mode that gives you access to the spinning evade and screw slicer attack after you've perfect evaded through an attack. Now, once you're in Demon Boost mode, if you evade through an attack, you will actually increase the duration left of Demon Boost mode. The initial duration of this effect is 20 seconds, like it was before the patch, but now if you dodge an attack during the duration, you refill that timer up. This can only happen twice and with a diminishing effect on the second one. When you proc this evade, it refills your Demon Boost mode up to a maximum of 12 bonus seconds. The Demon Boost duration timer can never be higher than a 20 seconds on your actual screen, which means if you trigger this with 15 seconds left on the base Demon Boost duration, you only get 5 bonus seconds of duration from this first evade. The maximum it can give you is 12, which only happens if you have the evade happen with 8 seconds or less left on the buff itself. The second evade is less potent, only giving you up to 8 seconds of bonus duration, again being cut short if you hit it when there is too much time remaining. Your third evade during Demon Boost mode and further than that have no bonus effect. So to try and simplify this down a little bit, make it easier to just sort of digest, your first perfect evade during Demon Boost mode gives you up to 12 bonus seconds of duration. Your second perfect evade gives you up to 8 bonus seconds. Further evades give nothing. If the time that you refill through this effect would put your Demon Boost duration above 20 seconds on your screen, you lose any time that would be beyond that point. This means through this effect, if you purposely timed it out and such, you could get a maximum of double duration on Demon Boost mode before it fully drops off, but in most realistic scenarios you won't be doing anything purposeful with this because you'll be wanting to dodge through every attack anyways, and so essentially this will just be a thing that happens passively and makes it slightly easier to exist, slightly better quality of life as a result. After that, we have another movement speed increase during Demon mode. This is not the first one of these you've done. Here it is pre-patch and post-patch footage right next to each other, running the same line in Demon mode, the same distance. The timing window has also been slightly increased for perfect evading with dual blades. This doesn't feel like a massive increase to me by any means, but I could definitely feel it being slightly easier to hit perfect evades on the training dummy. Then we have increased responsiveness of directional changes when using Screw Slicer during focus mode. Before the patch, if you were in focus mode, Screw Slicer would always go in the direction that your camera was facing when you started it, no matter what directional input you are using. Now, after the patch, what it does is actually curve the Screw Slicer if you move your camera. It still makes the initial direction ignore your stick inputs, but now if you turn the camera in focus mode during Screw Slicer, your character will actually curve their forward movement, and, while generally minor, this simply gives you more control over your positioning and over your attacks, so it is definitely a solid change. Moving on, we've got our next weapon of the day with some really impactful buffs, Hunting Horn. Quite possibly the largest singular change outside of a literal new attack animation for dual blades, Hunting Horn now gets hyper armor on the hilt stab attack. This is the attack that you get when doing any of your default notes while inputting backwards with your movement after doing another hit as part of a combo. This means that you can power through a ton of attacks by just busting out a hilt stab at the correct moment. And this also gives Hunting Horn a very consistent way to activate the Counter-Strike skill 2, which otherwise you could only activate with the weapon by using offsets the right timing or by being hit by attacks, as hyper armor attacks do trigger Counter-Strike, and now you have one. So it is a big buff in that regard, even outside of the comfort and quality of life of having an on-demand hyper armor option. Not to mention on top of that, the next line is that you can now use the hilt stab attack out of various attacks that you could not have done so previously. This includes your focus strike finisher, your echo bubble animation, your special performance animation, the encore animation, and even directly out of an evade, you can go right into a hilt stab if you're in focus mode. This means that you can now essentially use hilt stab the way that Greatsword uses tackles, but with a slightly lesser window of armor. I cannot express how big of a difference this is going to make long term once players adjust to it. A couple of changes past that too. Now you can create an echo bubble directly after using offset melody, resounding melody, or right after a performance encore as well. And then they also just made the focus strike easier to actually hit with. After that, we've got the weapon with the largest amount of changes, and quite likely the winner of the patch overall if we're talking strictly about how much of an effect these changes will have on their damage, which is Lance. First change is that the damage taken while on Power Guard has been decreased. Directly comparing pre-patch and post-patch with the exact same damage attack from the training dummy, seems like the damage is nearly half of what it was before during the same situation. This means it's an extremely potent change, and it's now an even better defensive tool. They also increased the raw damage of retribution thrust specifically after a perfect guard by around 33% on the first hit, the little hit, and by around 5% on the larger hit, so a reasonable power boost overall. They've increased the raw damage of wide sweep by around 14%, which is solid. They've also increased the raw damage of the reverse attack that you can do to turn around during your dash attack by around 15%, as well as the base finishing thrust for ending the dash attack early by right around 10%, and also the raw damage of the finishing twin thrust 2, the fully charged dash attack finisher, by around 16.5% on the second hit, no change to the first hit. So overall, the dash attack and the finisher options during this are a bit stronger, as well as wide sweep 2. Next line that needed testing here is elemental scaling for return thrust, mid thrust 1, 2, and 3, as well as triple thrust increased. I did this with the Raidal Lance for clarity on what I'm using, and the damage of the hits against the training dummy before the patch to after the patch, it went up by 3% for return thrust, 3% increase for mid thrust 1 and 2 as well, and then mid thrust 3 went up by 4%, so a larger buff to the third attack. They also buffed triple thrust, the combo finishing option, with a 3% increase to the first 2 hits, and then a 4% increase to the third hit as well. After that, we've got raw damage increases for payback thrust, grand retribution thrust, and high thrust 1, 2, and 3. For the actual numbers, payback thrust has had its raw damage increased by around 25% for the first hit and 40% for the second hit. It's still not your strongest response after getting a successful guard by any means, but it is much better than it was previously. For grand retribution thrust, the damage has gone up by around 11% on the big hit, with the other 2 hits seemingly staying the same as they were before. For the high thrust combo, it is around a 6.5% raw damage increase for each of the first 2 combo hits, and then an 8% raw damage increase on the third hit, which is not bad at all. The main takeaways from the last couple of sections are that the mid thrust combo is now even better for element than it was previously, and the high thrust combo is now even better for raw. So they're definitely trying to differentiate the combos and make each one of them better for a different type of playstyle. They've also increased the movement distance on leaping thrust, return thrust, and payback thrust when you have a movement direction inputted at the same time. And previously these 3 attacks provided pretty minimal movement, honestly. Now they give you a little bit more, just a little bit of quality of life. On a similar note, the animation is now faster to go into high thrust, mid thrust, or the dash attack from a wide sweep. This makes wide sweep more generally usable when it's relevant, on top of the fact that they also increase the damage of this attack too. And they also just reduced sharpness lost from the focus strike, and also made it so you can now follow up any successful power clash with the same options that you have after a perfect guard to make it even more rewarding. The next weapon with a showable change is Switch Axe. They made the offset detection friendlier, which mostly just means that it is easier to successfully offset with the offset attack. You'll feel this one naturally while you're playing with the weapon. It is quite a bit more forgiving now, and they've also increased the offset buildup from this attack too. To be clear, for anyone who doesn't know, offset has a buildup mechanic just like every status or ailment in the game. You usually don't see it in action because it often results in the first offset attack always getting a topple, then it takes 2 offsets for the next one, so on and so forth. But what this does then, for the most part, is just lets you get that 3rd or 4th topple from offsets with 1 less offset attack required to make it happen. It won't affect your first couple of topples, but the more offsets you do in a hunt, the more of a difference this change will make in getting you more topples as a result. After that, we've got some changes for the charge blade, which are sort of fun. First up, the raw damage of axe element discharge 1 and 2 has been increased. Specifically, this is a 4% raw damage increase for element discharge 1, and a 40% increase to the little hit of element discharge 2, no effect for the bigger secondary hit, but it is still a notable damage increase over the course of a hunt between these 2 attacks. They also increase the damage of the bonus damage ticks during power axe mode by around 25%. In the previous patch in Title Update 2, they nerfed these same ticks by 40% from their previous value, so like with Counter Slash for Sword and Shield, this is a slight reversion back to a midpoint between what Power Axe mode hits did originally and what they were doing right before this current patch. The final change is a fix that increases the damage of element discharge, specifically the file explosions from the attack were not receiving the proper boost from being enhanced files, and now that they are, the damage of the file explosions on these hits when the files are enhanced has been increased by around 16.5%. Moving on to the insect glaive changes in this patch, the first line is that the offset has been made a bit easier to perform, sort of like the Switch Axe change, and while it does feel a little bit more forgiving, it's definitely far less than what they did to Switch Axe's offset, and I can pretty confidently say that this is now the most challenging offset to successfully pull off among any of the weapons even after this change. The second change is increased invulnerability window when vaulting backwards. This just makes the backwards vault a really solid evasive maneuver, no doubt about it. It actually has quite a bit of iframes to work with now and is quite usable. They increase the distance gained when vaulting backwards as well, with evade extender, and directly comparing footage pre and post patch with 3 evade extender. The difference is honestly relatively minor, but it is a change, it is a buff nonetheless. Then there's some actual damage increases as well. Both Strong Reaping Slash and Dodge Slash have had their damage increased. Strong Reaping Slash has gone up by just under 30% on the first smaller hit, and also a 7.5% damage increase on the second hit. Dodge Slash has gotten a 17.5% damage increase for the rare occasion when you do use this attack, and then Strong Double Slash and Tornado Slash also got damage increases too. Strong Double Slash had its first hit damage increased by around 18%, the second hit damage is completely unchanged, and the third hit damage is increased by around 25%. This makes Strong Double Slash significantly stronger than it was in the past, and it boosts the triangle combo's effectiveness in general. And to make it even more worth using this standard combo, they increase Tornado Slash damage as well. The first hit is unchanged, but the second hit is increased by around 4.5%. So it's not a major increase, but just an extra cherry on top, as they seem to be trying to make all of the attacks that aren't Descending Slash and Rising Spiral Slash a little bit better and more impactful. Then our last set of meaningful weapon changes that we can properly test are for the light bowgun and heavy bowgun, which have some slightly shared changes as well. First up, for light bowgun, adhesive ammo, the special ammo type, has had its damage increased by around 20% on the little hits and 37.5% on the big hit itself. This actually makes adhesive ammo much more worth using and actually stopping to get out of your pocket if you have it. On a similar level, they also increase the damage pops from the wyvern blast special ammo type, the little mines that you can stick on the floor, and this has been increased by around 50%, so it is a pretty massive buff on these. The next line is that various types of status ammo have increased gauge generation, and this applies both to the rapid fire gauge for light bowgun and the ignition gauge for heavy bowgun, and this is an immediately noticeable massive difference. Before the patch, using these ammo types didn't really get you much gauge recovery at all, it was very minor. After the patch, all of these status ammo types might just be the quickest gauge recovery option there is for as long as you have a supply of the ammo. Bonus note that Pierce ammo has also had its gauge generation increased for both weapons, which is a slight reversion to the nerfs that they did to this in prior patches. It's not as strong as it was at the launch of the game, but better than it was in prior patches. The main other change for light bowgun is an increase to raw and elemental damage for element ammo, which results in around a 2.5% increase on element ammo shots against the training dummy, which is a slight boost, but definitely not bad considering element was already very solid on bowguns. For heavy bowgun, they increase the damage for both special ignition functions. Wyvern counter has had its damage increased by around 16% for the main hit that only triggers on successful counters, and then also a 10% increase on the damage of the standard hit that happens regardless. For Wyvern Blast Ignition, the damage has gone up by around 35%, which is a pretty large margin, but it is still just a very weak attack comparatively speaking even so. The other main changes are that the Focus Strike now has a slightly bigger radius on the hitbox, so the ammo can connect with wounds from slightly further away, and then they've also made the animation a little bit faster when you try to chain into guarding after using spread ammo. The difference isn't massive here, but it is a difference, and this just makes spread ammo gameplay a little bit more comfortable. That pretty much does it then for today, everyone. Every meaningful testable weapon change made to the game in patch 1.021. I hope you've all enjoyed this, and hopefully it helps you out in working out what's going on with your main weapon, however many of those you have. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.